This week on the Jerusalem Post podcast, the Jerusalem Post brings you footage and audio from our annual conference in New York, an interview with National Unity head Benny Gantz. Welcome to the Jerusalem Post podcast. I'm Sara Ben-Nun, legal correspondent for the Jerusalem Post, and I'm joined today by Eve Young, our economics and domestic affairs correspondent.
Thanks for having me.
How have you been?
Living the dream, as they say. You know that we love conference week, and we
love conference week.
It's so great to have like twice as much work to do, but also, you know what, twice as many interesting stories coming in.
No, there's a lot happening. And there's a lot happening in the news. Let's jump right in. We'll start off with something that we didn't manage to get to in our last recording because it happened after we recorded,
right?
Which is Trump's blitz visit to the Middle East, which has kind of amazed and blown away anyone who's been tracking what's been happening in the region for the last 2 decades or so. Trump met with a series of Middle East leaders, including notably Syria's president Ahmed al-Shara, who's an interesting figure. We've discussed him here before, and lifting the sanctions on Syria. So, this kind of shaky yet slightly hopeful, optimistic way out for a country that's been war torn for over a decade now. I think we still have to see kind of where it goes. But one interesting thing that has meant for us over here in Israel is that Syria sent over the possessions and anything that they had there that belonged to the legendary spy Eli Cohen. I didn't keep an eye on it so much, but Nadia Cohen said some incredible things when she received those things, and I think it's also kind of closing a circle on something that's been weighing down for so long, and to me just kind of rings scarily true in the hostage cycle that we're in right now, right?
I think among the possessions there was also like a letter, final letter. So talking about closing a circle, yeah, absolutely. Unbelievable. But yeah, I totally agree with you that it highlights this, like, it can be a moment of closing a circle, but what a crazy reality that we live in a situation where this circle has to be closed, and where 58 families today in Israel don't have that circle closed. Even those who know that their loved ones have been officially pronounced as slain hostages, some are bound to not believe, to doubt, to be still like thinking.
Also, I think there's really something to be said for having a place to mark where this person is, a gravesite. Their
Absolutely.
name is there. And we have, not just us, right? Like every culture has this show of honor. You lived a life, and here we are honoring it for you. And this is a designated place for us to come and dedicate our intentions to you and think about you and talk to you. And these families, they don't have that.
Yeah,
they don't have that, and they deserve to have it. And but we'll touch on it. We'll touch on that more. Today marks the second birthday in captivity that hostage David Cunyo.
He has 2 kids.
David Cunyo has 2 kids, and his brother Ariel is also
held captive. His brother Ariel is the partner of Arbel Yehud, who was freed recently in the recent hostage deal. And David Cunyo, a wife and 2 kids waiting for him here in Israel.
Also, lifelong friends who were also held hostage and are, kind of navigating this. I feel like that doesn't get visibility so much, or hasn't, at least in what I've seen. We've heard the families, we've heard the partners, but we all have best friends.
Yeah.
And, can you imagine?
And some of these,
the person closest, like your closest friend circle, in that situation, it's crazy.
It's a horrible nightmare. And because of the nature of the attack and the fact that so many of those attacked were all from the same small communities, some of these best friends really are people who also were held captive. Yerzen Bibas was like noting David Cunyo's birthday. And
said they were best friends since the 1st grade.
And you've got,
think about that. Like, whoa.
Emily Damari waiting for her best friends, Gali and Zivi. Zivi Berman, famously came to be with her during the attack. And that's where he was taken hostage from along with her. Yeah, and the hostages have said repeatedly, like freed hostages have repeatedly said that they can't recover, they can't move on, they can't heal.
Yeah.
Also, if we're talking about friendships and relationships, like so many forged in captivity. Keith Siegel, speaking at our conference, was sharing about how he became close to Matan Angrest and Omri Miran while in captivity, and how they mean so much to him, and he's waiting to do these things with them when they're freed, and that he can't recover without them. And they're in captivity with, unfortunately, it seems like not so much hope in sight right now, right?
Right. No, it's definitely still dragging on. One hostage that we did receive a form of life, a sign of life from this week was Matan Tzangauker, his mother Einav, who's nonstop,
incredibly active
for her son to come home, for the release of the hostages. Said that she came into a note that she recognized as being written by Matan, where he was held in a tunnel. And, it's a horror movie. It's really...
She was sharing new details about his condition, saying that he's having trouble standing, kind of other just information about his condition right now, which is not good. She also, in recent weeks, has come out saying that he is a carrier for an autoimmune disease,
like a muscle degenerative disease or something. Something close to that. Yeah.
And saying that this could bring like an outbreak, like stress can bring an outbreak.
Yeah.
And what's more stressful than being held hostage? I truly don't know. Yeah, and not just like a flare up of a condition he suffers with. He's had a dormant form, and she's saying this could cause him to be disabled. And in general, we know that the hostages have come out in horrible medical conditions, some of them permanently altered by this experience, all of them likely emotionally and mentally permanently altered. It's really horrifying. And another, I think, horrifying element, especially of Einav's story, is that she is incredibly vocal in her fight to bring her son home. And she has just, as part of that, been very outspoken against the Israeli government at times, whether accusing them of not doing enough, of taking political considerations over considerations that are focused on the well-being of the hostages. And she recently has also said that she thinks that she's going to be punished for that, and that Israeli officials will try to leave her son behind. She said the prime minister, she thinks, will punish her by leaving her son alone in the tunnels. And regardless of whether we think that the prime minister would do that or not, to hear such a deep crisis of faith between citizens and their representatives, especially, I think, the families of the hostages are the citizens that most need the state behind them. They most need the support and the functions of the state, more than anyone. That's when you need your country to be with you, is when you're in a horrible situation like this, God forbid. And to hear that she just has absolutely no faith in that support, it's absolutely heartbreaking. And it's also very terrifying. Even if 10% of what she says is true, it's how do we get out of bed in the morning?
I will say that I one thing that has kind of struck me and blown me away is the popular support. When you talk to people, they're, of course, the hostages. I think there is the dissonance there hurts even more. But to me, there is a little bit of a silver lining there of the human quality is still what I always believed it to be. It is still top notch. It is still, we don't leave our people behind. We fight for them.
And polls overwhelmingly show again and again that the Israeli public is really with the hostages and really ready even to end the war and sacrifice total victory over Hamas, whatever that means in people being polled's minds, because we haven't seen a plan for the government for what that means.
Yeah.
They're willing to do that to bring the hostages home. And I think that you're right that truly embodies this wonderful spirit still within people, and just frighteningly not something we're seeing given
priority,
expressed.
Yeah. Well, listen, all this is coming about as the Israel and security forces announced last week that we are renewing fighting in Gaza. They even gave it a new name to the operation, which
Gideon's Chariot.
To the Bible learners among us.
I hate to make light,
but no.
I hate to make light of anything so serious as this, but also can we pick better names? I'm sorry,
this is a
IDF spokesperson's unit. I apologize, but pick better names. Also, I don't really apologize.
But on a more serious note, fighting means higher likelihood of accidents, casualties, fire exchange, etc. 2 soldiers were killed in Gaza fighting this week. One of them, we're recording on Wednesday. One of them was announced this morning. The other one, I think 2 days ago or a day ago. And one of them was killed from friendly fire, which also just like is a punch to the gut, right? Because you can't avoid it. These things happen when you're in that situation. It's mud, it's sand, it's hot. It's not, you can't avoid it. And it just really deepens the tragedy.
I hope that we can avoid it. Like, I think that you're right that we've never managed to in any war. Like, we know that, like, I don't know if there's ever been, whatever, I'm not a military history expert, so someone will probably point to a war where there was not a single incident of friendly fire. We know that Israel generally does have incidents of friendly fire. We know that in this war, I don't have updated statistics, but at the beginning of the war, we were seeing a much higher rate of friendly fire incidents and deaths. Yeah, listen, it's something that like absolutely needs to be addressed and kind of touches on a general fear that the IDF's kind of discipline has been slipping, that the IDF's like kind of functions and protocols haven't been being adhered to.
Interesting.
Which I think we can see that in kind of 2 separate tracks. One kind of path that like has been, I think, a part of this is just the fact the war has been so long. It's been going on for so long. It's mostly powered by reservists who are just regular people pulled out of their lives, and people are exhausted, worn out. Combat soldiers have been doing tens and tens of days in a row in combat conditions.
It's not a way to be.
It's really not conducive of maintaining discipline.
The like long-term effects, the psychological effects, the
absolutely
effects, all these people, the reservists especially, are coming back to partners, wives, children, families, businesses. You're carrying all of that with you, and I don't think that we're really yet talking about the price and giving it the weight that it deserves, because it's Israel and everyone fought in a war, and there's an operation every 5 years or 10 years, or so it's kind of this collective, like everyone experiences this, but at the same time it's a heavy price
and
to
this
pay,
is like a war of attrition.
Exactly.
This isn't like a quick blitz.
Every aspect.
This isn't Guardian of the Walls where there was no ground incursion and it was quickly over. Like, this is a lot. And I think another kind of thing that we're seeing as part of the conversation about like, is the IDF becoming more lax on its discipline standards and following procedure, is the conversation of kind of a general feeling of lawlessness in Gaza and in the Gaza war.
Oh, okay.
We've had people coming forward to organizations to say there's no clear rules of engagement, or they're saying they feel a breach of trust with higher level commanders, all kinds of like strange things that we're seeing happen.
It's like these like frayed strings of this much larger project.
I think that like it's just such an intense situation that Israelis were thrown into, with a fear of death, with all of kind of the past of like nationalistic feelings and feelings about Gaza and feelings about Gazans and the trauma and revenge, and just a huge mess and hodgepodge, that one of the results has been kind of concerns regarding, are the IDF upholding their standards? And we're hearing stories of looting, and we're hearing rumors about burning in revenge, like homes in Gaza. And I think that like friendly fire plays into that. Like, are we a professional army? And also we can talk about, I don't know if we're there yet in the agenda of topics to talk about today, but that kind of ties into Yair Golan speaking yesterday.
We will
exactly about this.
We will jump to that. I do want to just take a glance outward from the ground that we are in and talk more about the global response and what the reactions have been to Israel, because they have not been good, and they have not been okay, and they've actually been getting worse. And to the approach that says we'll do whatever we want, our safety is first, you don't live in a vacuum. Israel doesn't exist in a vacuum. Israel cannot afford to become a pariah state, and the things that we do, we live in a global community. The things that we do affect that community, are affected by it, and at the end of the day, we have to remember that Israel is a democratic country with liberal Western values at its core. We can, have different conversations about where that's going and how that's changing, but that is the core. And if we want to remain a part of that club, as it were, we're going to have to make some changes soon when it comes to this war. So tell us a bit about right, what we've been seeing this week, the economic.
Yeah. So yesterday, I think it was both of them. Yesterday, the UK said it was pausing trade talks with Israel following kind of what's been happening in Gaza. And the EU said it wanted to review also trade plans. So
how big is this?
It's hard to say because we're talking about a pause and a review. So maybe that means we get back on track. Also, like, we're not talking, I mean, the EU, like, significant trade partners, the UK, significant trade partners for us. But it's just hard to say with what happens. Again, pause and review, nothing final. At the same time, economies run on expectations. Markets run on expectations. If there is an expectation that there is a significant possibility that trade between X and Y either won't materialize or exists and will be stopped, or that like this is just kind of an early flag and additional countries are going to come out and say we're also going to limit, stop, re-review trade with Israel, it can cause significant changes, right? Like economies and markets are delicate things. And really, I mean, even just the rumor, a whisper of something can change what happens. Yesterday, I think the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange saw some falls after the UK announcement. And again, whatever, stock exchanges, they bounce around, they do stuff, they adjust.
They do stuff.
They do things. But
concerning,
I think the big concerns here are, I mean, yeah, I think it's not a new thing. We know that we're acting in such a way that is going to cause states in our global community to take action and to change how they relate to us. And we have to take that seriously. It's exactly what you said at the beginning. Like, we are members of a global community. No one who cares about Israel, no one who likes living in this country, realistically wants to see us isolated on the global stage. We're a tiny country in a world where we have to pivot to making all of our own weapons and food security, like, or our trade partners are people whose values we don't align with. Like, why would we do any of that? Why would we want any of that? Like,
this reminds me a lot of the dialogue that I remember going around with the credit score drops. It was like a similar discussion of, you know, on the one hand, not such a big deal, changes all the time, we'll bounce back, it's a war, to we need to take this seriously.
I think anyone saying that the credit rating drops were not a big deal, they have an agenda to make it seem like not a big deal. And we know this, right? We know that when Bezalel Smotrich, finance minister, comes out and says it's not a big deal, it's going to recover right after the war, he has a reason to say that. And we know that when Yair Golan, the accountant general, says that, he also, literally his job is to promote our economy globally. Like, that's what their job is.
Right.
It doesn't mean it's not. Like, we, from Moody's right now, have the lowest credit score we've ever had, ever historically. These are hard-earned credit scores. These are hard-earned things. And a credit score, it's only a label of how good you are. But again, the economy runs on expectations.
Thank you for that. That's really enlightening to the non-economists among us. The big kind of cloud that's looming over all of this is the aid. The question of aid. Israel, I'll remind us, froze the entry of humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip in March. This led to a global outcry. It was the subject of hearings at the International Court of Justice, and really allowed the freezing, the halting of aid really came after the hostage deal in January, where we saw 30 some odd hostages get out. Now some aid is going back in, and we saw our new pope, the new pope,
Leo.
Pope Leo.
I mean, you could say R as an American.
R as an American.
Our first. He's our first pope from America, right?
He's from Chicago. I don't,
Chi-town. Was there like a New York Chicago beef that I don't know about?
Yeah, it mostly surrounds pizza.
Chicago deep dish is like really delicious.
We're not going to discuss this.
It's really good. I like New York pizza too, but like, okay, sorry. Keep going.
No, I think it's interesting because the with the last pope, there were some kind of tensions there with what Israel saw, what Jerusalem saw, what Israelis kind of saw as one-sided support, contextless support for Gaza, and sympathy for the conditions of Palestinians in Gaza. I don't think has to be like a politicized issue, like you can see that and say that's a horrible way to live. But people saw his comments as like one-sided, not really kind of taking in the full context of the war.
I think people see that, like, sorry, I know I'm taking us so off track right now, but also like I think that's such a characteristic of our world these days, where it's like any show of support for the wrong side means that you're not on our side. But like, let's not forget that that Pope Francis met with the hostage families numerous times, called for them to be like brought back to like, he's been a huge staunch supporter of the Israeli hostages. Like, again, it's
not black and white, right? It's not black and white.
I mean, I think we treat it like black and white way too often. We're like, oh, you said that children in Gaza are hungry. You hate Israel. You're an anti-Zionist and an anti-Semite. And it's like, we could dial that down.
I think we can also introduce more nuance into the conversation. It doesn't have to be, from the gut with no allowance for anything else.
And say, not sending an official representative to the Pope's funeral. We don't have to react like that.
So there were some Israeli representatives that did meet with the Pope after. And, he called for aid. He also, I think, gave a pretty standard kind of...
Yeah, he also called for the return of the hostages.
Another thing that happened this week that kind of adds to the global nature of the war and kind of how it's all been going is another chapter, the continuation in a disturbing series of arrests and indictments that have been going on in Israel, which are Israelis arrested for spying for Iran. This week it was a 16-year-old. He was a minor.
A 16-year-old.
I covered the story, and I at first didn't realize he was a minor. I was like, where's his name? And then I realized, oh my God, the kid's a 16-year-old. 16, so his name is not publicized. He was indicted for taking the photos of places, sharing live locations of certain buildings. There was one instance where he wrote on a piece of paper as a question, what will the next target be? And then he took photos of several kind of government buildings like National Insurance or the police station or things like that in Rehovot, I believe. And he took those photos and kind of did that. There were a few other things that the indictment says that he did. But this is, I remember when the first such case came out.
Yeah.
And it was this shock of, what? Like, how?
An Israeli spying on Israelis, the national loyalty is so high.
Exactly,
how could it be?
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
This, going into this dialogue about patriotism and how can you if you are? And then slowly but surely, more and more and more.
Yeah, quite a few.
Definitely more than what there should be, and just a surprising amount. Like, it's become a steady kind of trend. The only thing is just to kind of glance at it with concern, and I think maybe on a deeper level to look at our education, at our cultural values, at what are we doing that this is something that a teenager can be lured to do.
Again,
right?
is it, maybe I'm just a broken record and I only see things through one lens. Maybe that's me. But again, I feel like this ties into the crisis of trust. If you don't have trust in your government, in your country, in your society, you also don't have loyalty.
That's so interesting. I think I would be more careful to make that tie, just because a lot of these people have been just young, maybe bored. Sorry.
It's true. A 16-year-old.
Yeah. People, do you know what I mean? And
a lot of them were younger.
Ranges or retirees, or it's such a random range.
But again, I think 16 is the age when you in Israel are preparing to go to the army. If you're in the Jewish population, it's when you're having these deep conversations about what am I, what's my identity, who do I belong to? And of course, if you're 16, you can be lured away with a lot of the people that have been indicted for spying or arrested or investigated for spying were offered significant amounts of money.
Oh yeah, I think all of them were paid.
Yeah, so of course it could happen. I just think that when we're talking about this shock that's inherent to who we are culturally, and also I think after one of the first incidents, we had editorials and analyses about the fact that the idea that Israelis are spying is just so foreign to us because of this sense of national ethos of we're all together, we're
in
with,
this.
and again, I think that the past 2 years have turned that national narrative on its head. And of course, you're right. We should be careful. And I shouldn't say like, that's why, that's the reason. I just think it's interesting to look at those two things in parallel.
I think it's interesting. I think it works very much in tandem with a heightened sense of nationality. Like the way that I kind of analyze it is that it's just gotten more extreme in both directions. People are more asking these questions of what are we doing here? What's our purpose? What's our goal? What's a Jewish state? And people are also rah-rah. I don't mean that cynically.
No, for sure.
People are more invested. People are more connected. People are really kind of.
And that goes back to judicial reform, these conversations about who are we as a country.
They really do.
I do just want to say about this case that Khan reported that the 16-year-old actually said he went to police and wasn't helped, which is like also crazy to think about.
That's wild.
And I think the way that they reported it was his lawyer saying that he had gone to police and sought help and that he had almost been made into like a double agent. Like they had almost had him continue to do these things even though he's a minor, and his parents weren't told. Again, this is the lawyer, so we should take everything with a grain of salt. It's a Khan report right now.
We also can't verify it, but
like it was from the lawyer of the boy, so interested but also knowledgeable in the case, and saying that like the 16-year-old knew that his handlers knew where he lived because they delivered a SIM card to him at his house. So like how terrifying. Like we shouldn't only think about the money side, also like how terrifying to like.
No, that's a lot. It's really a lot. I want to drag us back a little bit to another realm of this, which is our lovely elected officials and politicians. Democrats chair Yair Golan made some
huge waves, really big waves, the biggest waves we've ever seen in Israel.
When he said, I don't remember on what public forum it was, but he said a lot of things.
We can say the quote, I think, because it caused such stir. We can say the exact quote. Yes. Israel's on the path to becoming a pariah state among the nations, like South Africa of old. If it does not return to behaving like a sane country. A sane country does not wage war against civilians, does not kill babies for a hobby, and does not set goals involving the expulsion of populations. These things are simply appalling. It cannot be that we, the Jewish people, who have suffered persecution, pogroms, and genocide throughout our history, and who have served as a moral compass for Jewish and human values, are now taking actions that are simply unconscionable.
People immediately, politicians, even the president. Not to mention, civilians all across the internet. Really blew up at Golan for insinuating that the IDF is killing Palestinian babies in Gaza.
They took a ton of offense at the word hobby.
Yeah, hobby. Really, that was the kicker, and kind of seeing it as fodder for what anti-Israel people say, what Hamas says. Some politicians even came out and said Hamas is happy now, like you did their job for them. So that's the criticism. I want to point out one thing about that, which is that Golan did not talk about the IDF in his statement.
And that's exactly his clarification. We'll get into that totally.
He didn't mention the army. He directed his criticism at state policy.
Yeah.
You can still disagree with him, but I do think, when we criticize people, we need to be accurate with what we're criticizing.
Yeah.
And everyone made that. Everyone did that.
Yeah.
Everyone conflated what he said about the state with the IDF. And if you'll give his clarification, I think that will really kind of tie it together.
Yeah. I mean, some people also said that, you can't make the distinction. Like, we'll read the distinction that he made, but some people said, listen, if you're talking about killing babies in Gaza, by definition, you're talking about the IDF because they are the executive arm, not the executive, they're the functional arm of the government.
Follows policies
the orders of the political echelon.
Yeah, absolutely.
So his response, he later held a press conference and gave like a very long speech about it, not apologizing, but he did include in that speech saying that this morning I stated that we are a sane country that does not kill children. When ministers in this government celebrate the death and starvation of children, it must be said. My remarks were directed solely at the most failed government in Israel's history, not at the IDF. Our mission is to ensure that Israel remains a sane country that does not kill children, neither as a hobby nor as a policy.
We'll also note that Golan served in the military for years.
Like he was the deputy chief of staff.
Deputy chief of staff.
He was almost the chief of staff.
Listen, I think what he said was harsh, and everyone will kind of take it to the place that they want to take it. But I do think that there is significance to someone who is rising in the polls and clearly represents, a significant group in the population, and sentiments like that is coming out and saying it. And also, I think to just a credit to his kind of inner strength, not backing down from any of everyone volleyed criticism.
Even people seen as very moderate, or the chief of staff also had a response like himself.
Right. So I think, it may be crazy lone man, but I do think that at least it's refreshing. It's refreshing to see someone, whether I agree or disagree with them, who's really willing to stand for what they said, what they believe, and to make clarifications like that when they're necessary.
I also think that our reaction should be very telling. Our reaction, like the national reaction, should be very telling to us, because a leader in this country who was very high ranking in the army, who was very aware of what's happening right now on the ground, like not an uneducated person, not an un-Israeli person, not an anti-IDF person, a person who fought and saved many lives on October 7th, just took his weapon and went down and joined forces on October 7th, an actual Israeli hero, like regardless of what we think of his policies now. Not at all someone that you can separate from the military echelon. He is the IDF as well. Is saying, someone like that is saying, we are doing something wrong. We need to stop. We are doing something deeply wrong and must stop now. Instead of hearing that criticism and addressing it, we all fell on the choice of wording. We all decided to focus on how he said it, and is it going to give fuel to anti-Semitism?
And is it a hobby?
And that is so not important. Like I'm not going to say it. I'll say it. My favorite expression in Hebrew is "lisachek bekaki," like we're playing in the poop. But in more formal language,
in the poop or with the poop?
Playing with the poop.
With the poop.
In more formal language, we are so deeply focused on the far less important aspects. The conversation that should have raised,
that's really valid. Yeah.
The conversation that should have raised is: have we gone too far? Are we doing something wrong? Are we committing war crimes? Is this government dragging this country to a place of deep immorality? I said we a bunch of times here. I really do mean, like, is the government causing the state and the soldiers to do something? I don't put the personal responsibility.
Right? Meaning not what he said, but what he meant. And let's deal with what he meant.
I mean, also what he said. Instead of focusing on what he said, we focused on how did he say it, why we didn't like it, and how it makes us look. How we look right now is not what's important.
What we're doing.
What we're doing is important. And this man is raising a massive red flag. And he's not an outsider, and he's not a radical. And he's raising a huge red flag. And we all chose to, not we all, everyone who responded in this manner, which was the heads of institutions in the country, chose to look at the tiny fringe on the flag and focus on that. And I think that that's the wrong response. I also think it's understandable. It's like a defense mechanism to say, you're saying words that are like hurting me and concerning me. I can't even hear them. I can't even take them in. But we need to, because it's been a year and a half.
Yeah.
And we need to start listening to warnings like this.
I think, none of this can be really separated. The war policy and where we're going and where hostage talks are, which is right now at pretty much a bit of a standstill. Israel is still kind of pushing for the Witkoff deal. Statements back and forth, but it's pretty quiet at the moment. None of that can be really separated from our prime minister and all of the legal clouds that follow him around. His defense trial is about to conclude, which means that the cross-examination section of the trial will begin either next week or the week after. And that, just from the prosecution's perspective, is kind of what they've been waiting for. Now we get to grill him and really kind of move this forward. So that is happening. I'm there. I see him twice a week. It's actually like a pretty significant time factor, and it's wild that he's there, and then he's also doing all of these other things. I think that is an important thing to keep in mind. There are also the arrest of his close aide, Yonatan Orich, who is a suspect in the Qatargate investigations. If you don't know what that is, Look it up. It's a new word.
Look it up.
You should know what it is.
You should, yeah.
So that's kind of still being shuffled around. Police requested to extend his house arrest today. So, kind of keeping an eye and seeing where all that is going. But all that is happening while the war is still going on, while soldiers are dying, while we're still fighting, and while Gaza is a kind of devastated wasteland right now. I'll pull us back to the hostages a bit so that we can introduce our interview at the Jerusalem Post annual conference this week in New York. National Unity MK Benny Gantz spoke and he addressed a lot of these things. He talked about the prerogative to bring home the hostages as, if it's getting worse for them and as things are advancing on the operational side, and as well what can be done in the day after, what should be done the day after, not Hamas, not Israel, what yes. So with that, I will allow us to take it away.
How are you?
Good. Very happy to be here. Thank you very much.
So a few weeks ago, you were at a conference in a settlement called Ofra, and you spoke about, and Israel Gantz was there, right? Who is not your cousin, I think, but you have the same last name.
We've checked it before, and I didn't have the luck to be his family.
Okay, whatever. Anyways, so you spoke about the fact, I'm not quoting you exactly, but basically you said, and correct me if I'm wrong, those who think that a two-state solution is feasible or a Palestinian state is feasible are delusional or living in a fantasy world.
Yes, definitely, if I may, I think we have so many challenges around us in the Middle East and around Israel, from Iran to inner terrorism that we might face in Israel, and economical issues and social issues. But I think the first and foremost importance is getting back our hostages. I think that's the most important element. Complexities have been with us for those years and they will be with us for the future, but I think that our commitment to each other is most important, and I think that the fact that we are willing to pay prices for them coming home, it's a show of a strength and not a show of a weakness. And I was so happy to see the families, and I still see the families here, and I wish for them to strengthen themselves, because it's a long journey and an ongoing effort, but we must get all the hostages back home and we will take care of all the rest later.
Amen, definitely.
As far as your questions, I think that, like Israel said here before, most Israelis would not like to control the Palestinians. Mm-hmm. But all the Israelis are not willing to take the security risk for any future arrangement. And for us, looking into the future, we must find ways of living one aside another, but we cannot take the risk. And what I said in Ofra was that if you look at the state as it is, as people just expecting to have a state, that's a delusion. Israel must maintain security superiority over the whole region, and we must be able to take care of ourselves in terms of security, and I think that's what leads us all the rest.
Okay, so you're a former IDF chief of staff, former defense minister. President Trump visited the Middle East last week, and we spoke about it on the stage. There are those that were disappointed that either he didn't visit or saw it as a missed opportunity for Israel in the Middle East sphere during that visit. Do you agree with those claims of a missed opportunity?
I think we must maintain a bipartisan relations with the United States and vice versa between the United States to the State of Israel, regardless who is the Prime Minister or who is the President. I think that the relations between our two nations and our two countries have such a high importance for both of us. Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East. I think it is the strongest country in the Middle East, and I think it should stay the strongest country in the Middle East, and that's not only our interest, I think it's the interest of the United States itself. So I'm not too excited of a visit here or visit there, a speech here or a speech there. I'm looking at the essence of the relations between the United States and Israel. And I know there's no other Israel for the United States in the Middle East, and there's no other United States for Israel elsewhere in the world. So I think we will maintain our relations, and I think that's what we should focus on.
Okay. So before you were chief of staff of the IDF, you were head of the Northern Command. And President Trump, during his visit, spoke about, and he encouraged al-Julani, al-Shara, to president of Syria, to normalize relations with Israel. So you know Syria very well. I don't know how in depth you know it. Is that even feasible? Do you see it as something possible?
Well, I think it's very important for us to take the lesson from October 7 and make sure there's no meaningful threat that is being developed along our borders that will set the base for future invasion as we saw the one on October 7. So I think for us, it's very important to combine the balance between being alert to potential threat, but also not to miss opportunities when those shows themselves around. And I think that potentially the government of Lebanon that can try and save Lebanon from the hands of Hezbollah, and it's in the hand of Giuliani to decide what kind of Syria he wants to have in the future. So from our perspective, I think we should be alert, stay on alert in terms of security aspects, but if there are options for normalization and who knows where it can go, and then I think it can be a good chance. So we should combine between those two all the time.
Okay, so you're saying Lebanon and Syria are can potentially be part of the Abraham Accords, potentially an ally.
In Hebrew you would say, אני שמח שזה המצב, אני לא סומך על המצב. I'm very happy at that situation, I don't count on it. So we will be ready for whatever come, but let us hope that there will be a better future.
Okay. Let's hope, that this war will end very soon. Hostages will be released. What is the day after for Gaza? And also maybe possibly Judea and Samaria. So what is, is it a Riviera, as President Trump mentioned? Is it, I don't know, is it a external government?
Yeah, well, I think that while focusing on the day after in Gaza, we must first look at the day after in the entire Middle East, and it regards with Iran itself. Because I think Iran is a global challenge. Iran is a threat for the region's stability, and it's also a threat for the state of Israel. And it's a threat for the state of Israel from its direct activities and definitely the potential of nuclear, but also the support of terrorism as we saw it in that case, Hezbollah on one hand and Hamas in the other hand. So first and foremost, we must make sure that Iran cannot continue to negatively influence this region and definitely not reaching nuclear capacity that will back them up while doing those things. So once this is neutralized, I think that the future of Gaza has one condition to the long run. It cannot be Hamas. And it shouldn't be us. So it has to be someone else who is seriously taking that place. I've said so many times before, it's a question of a decade-long event until something can be built for them in Gaza and we can live beside it. And secondly, a generation of deradicalization on fixing the education system and making something else but this as a vision for those people. We will protect ourselves. I've moved to Yad Mordechai. I know how it is to live around this border right now. I think we can handle it. The most important, as I started this discussion, is getting back the hostages, and all the rest will be taken care of later. We are strong enough to go through this process, and I'm sure we will succeed.
So no Riviera and immigration of Palestinians to...
Well, I mean, if those who wants to live and there are those who are willing to accept them, I think it's great. And I don't forget eventually everybody is a human being, and the people of Gaza need to have a better future for them than those jihadistic that kept them captured as if you wish, hostages through this life. But once again, we care for our people, for our hostages, for our border. Look, who did they murder? Who did they murder? People that went to Erez Passage and took them to hospital on daily basis, they were murdered later? Ophir Lipstein, my friend, that wanted to build a 10,000 workers industrial zone for them, and he was murdered. So they not just murdered our people, they murdered in many ways their future. So they need to change the way. Hamas cannot control it. We will defend ourselves, and that will be the future of Gaza. It's there to decide.
Knesset member Benny Gantz, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so very much, and I want to thank you for having this very important conference that take the reality of Israel and say the truth outside. It's very important. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening to the Jerusalem Post podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please give it a like, a thumbs up, comment, subscribe, share, anything. You can find us anywhere that podcasts are streamed. See you next time. Be well.